Hi, and welcome to Eat Well with Parkinson's. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Paula.
We're going to be your host today. Before we get started, I want to give a special welcome to our live audience guest. It's great to have you here, so thank you for joining us. Eat Well with Parkinson's. Paula, can you believe we've been doing this? This is our 8th episode.
I know, it's amazing. I'm amazed.
Welcome. Come on in.
I love working with Sarah because she's got a lot of energy and she has a lot of connection with these patients with Parkinson's disease. So it's great to kind of pull things together and work together to kind of coordinate a healthy eating program for Parkinson's patients.
It's been a lot of fun. I've been asked several times, why eat well with Parkinson's? So I like to mention, just before we get started with our cooking show today, there are over 1 million people living with Parkinson's disease in the United States. The number of people diagnosed with the disease doubled over the past 20 years, and it's going to double again in the next 20 years. To date, there is no known cure, but we do know that people who exercise regularly and eat well do better than those who don't. I think that's true for all of us, not just people living with Parkinson's disease. But we are producing this show here at LTV Studios to try to bring some of this nutritional cooking information to you in your home so that hopefully you can also make healthy food choices. What's our topic today, Paula?
Our topic today is chewing and swallowing issues for patients with Parkinson's disease. I also wanted to highlight that we always use seasonal and local produce. We are getting on the holidays. Are you cooking for Thanksgiving?
I am. I'm hosting for the first time.
Whoa, that's
I know.
wonderful.
Yeah, we have 13 people. I'm a little nervous.
So the interesting thing about all our recipes is all our recipes are appropriate for anybody in your family, anybody that's a relative, anybody that you want to bring something to. We're making a great soup today, and that would be great to bring to someone's home or even just enjoy as part of your appetizer for Thanksgiving. So I'm excited for you to try it.
Yeah, me too.
So we are making a honey nut squash soup. And the interesting thing about it, they're so cute.
Never seen a honey nut squash before.
Okay, so the reason why I chose these is because the butternut squash, if you want to grab that one, is just way too big sometimes to manage. The skin is very tough.
Yeah.
If you end up not being able to find it in the grocery store, you might be able to puncture it a little bit and put it in the microwave to soften, because this skin is very hard to manipulate. I also noticed in the grocery store that you have it's already cut up. If you want to make butternut squash, there's already cut up butternut squash. I like to use the honey nut just because they're soft, they're easy to manage, and they taste a little sweeter to me. So I like that. And hopefully, so what we're going to do is we're going to put this soup together. We're going to serve it with a dollop of yogurt to add a little bit extra protein. You know me, I'm big on protein for muscle mass. Keeping our muscle mass strong, keeping our immunity strong, and keeping our health strong. So I really think this is an overall great opportunity to kind of get something in that's tasty and delicious.
I'm really excited. Before we get started, we do have a very special guest who will join us at the end of the show. Very, very excited to bring her on. But Paula, can you just give us highlights about some of the topics related to chewing and swallowing difficulties?
So the concern about chewing and swallowing difficulties, we want to try and keep people at optimal health with optimal weight. When they have Parkinson's disease, sometimes they have chewing and swallowing issues, but they don't necessarily pinpoint them to causing a problem with Parkinson's. And when we look at weight and weight status, we want to make sure people are not losing weight. When we lose weight, sometimes we lose weight also for age-related decline, and our muscles get taxed. And muscle mass is so critical for a lot of movement in the body, a lot of things we do, a lot of strength we have. So most muscle mass depletion is one of the things that we target, and we try and have high protein meals to try and combat that. And the next thing, when we look at chewing and swallowing, it's very important to be evaluated from the beginning of your treatment to see if you have any kind of swallowing issues. Marta's going to come on and talk about speech issues and swallowing issues. But to me, it's very critical because I see patients, but they never think it's important to even see a nutritionist or dietitian like myself or see a swallow therapist. But we're here as part of a team to help support patients. So that's why it's so critical to take a look at your nutrition and see how you're doing. And sometimes people don't realize they're losing weight. Sometimes the spouse or the care partner might notice that they're eating a little bit less. Okay, and you know, you and I, we have husbands that we keep track of, and you know, no one likes to
We
admit
try.
they're having problems. So it's really good to try and, you know, keep that real focus going. Is that you're trying to help someone, you're trying to manage and oversee things, and if you see a decline in weight, or the pants are fitting a little bit looser, or they're not chewing, or they're coughing, or they're having issues, it's really important to try and get help and look for ways to really help them understand what's going on.
So I'm excited to bring Marta on in a minute, but should we get started with the soup?
Yeah, so this is a really easy recipe. I'm roasting all the vegetables. Let me pull it out of the oven. I did a start to roast them ahead of time. The reason why I'm roasting the vegetables because it makes the soup very easy. Can you give us a camera view of that? Okay. So what I did is I took these baby squash and some onions and some carrots, and I've cut them up into thin strips, easy to manage and cook. This will cook up in 15 to 20 minutes. And then
How hot is the oven?
the oven's at 400.
Okay.
So when we have the oven at 400, we're trying to make sure everything is soft and fork tender. So let me just grab a fork in here. And we're just making sure it's fork tender, so you can see it's very, very soft. And then what you would do is you would let it cool. So I'm going to set this aside.
Here.
Okay. And then I have some that's already been set up for us to use quickly and easily. So I put some olive oil in the pot. Okay.
So I have to confess, I had a sneak peek at the recipe and tried it over the weekend at home, and it is delicious.
Okay. And this is one of the things that you make, and then you could even just change the vegetable up. Like I said, you can use the butternut squash. You can just do more carrots. I just like it because it's a warm and cozy type of soup, but it also has a lot of good nutrition in it. A lot of anti-inflammatory phytonutrients, phytochemicals. The beta-carotene is great for our eyes. The fiber in these things are great. Do you remember how many servings of fruit and vegetables we want everybody to eat?
Is it 30 a week?
30 a week minimum, yes.
So we have in here 1, 2, 3 already.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So we want people to eat 30 fruits and vegetables because we want to make sure you're getting all the different colors in. Okay. So this soup is something that we're really just trying to work with people. Now, my husband doesn't like squash. Does your husband eat squash?
He does, yeah.
Oh, wow, you're lucky.
Yeah, so what do you do? Do you substitute it?
I make this just with carrot.
Okay.
So he doesn't like squash or sweet potato, but he'll eat carrots. So I'll just make it with the carrots and onions. And when you put them on the baking sheet and you caramelize them, it gets a little bit extra sweetness to the taste of the vegetables. So it's really, really nice. Okay.
And when I made this at home over the weekend, the consistency, you'll show them in a minute, we puree it, but it was silky and really unbelievable.
It is a great recipe.
Do you need help? Can I help you with that?
I think I'm on my last one.
Okay.
Okay. You can stir it up there. So what you're going to do is you're going to roast the vegetables ahead of time. It ends up being a very easy soup after that. Just trying to get it all out of here, but we'll just go like that. Okay. And then what I like to do to kind of capture a little bit more of the flavors, I like to make a hole in the center of the squash and the onions. And then what we do is we just toast our spices a little bit. So I'm going to put a little drop more of olive oil.
And that brings out the flavor, I think.
It brings out the flavor and also makes the kitchen taste great, so that could help with the appetizing effect. Okay, so this is just some garlic. So we do the garlic a little bit first to try and just make sure we caramelize it but not burn it.
So you bring up a good point. I just want to reiterate that people with Parkinson's disease also experience food apathy. We spoke about that last month.
Yes, great point.
And so when you walk into a kitchen and you smell the garlic and the spices and the roasted veggies, it helps to stimulate appetite and hopefully motivate people also to sit and eat and share a meal.
Okay, so our three main spices are the garlic for ginger, So that also gives us a nice warming spices, a nice anti-inflammatory effect, and a great taste. And we have some turmeric. Turmeric is one of our anti-inflammatory spices. We like to make sure turmeric has the black pepper and the olive oil because those two things work synergistically together, or three things, olive oil, black pepper, and turmeric to boost the immunity and reduce the inflammation. And we have a little bit of cumin. Okay, so this is like a 30-second mix.
Oh, it smells so good.
And once you start smelling it, you're done. And then what you're gonna do is we're going to add the broth. So the whole recipe has 4 to 6 cups of broth. So we make half a recipe ahead of time, so we're gonna do that and puree this in a minute. We're just gonna let this simmer a little bit and we're gonna start the other recipe.
And what kind of broth did you use today?
I used vegetables. Sometimes I like to use chicken broth if you're someone that likes to eat chicken because I like that flavor of it. So you can use either chicken or vegetable broth.
Is there a benefit of using bone broth? I feel like that's the new hot topic.
Yes, good thing you brought that up. So bone broth is great because it has collagen in it, it has vitamins and minerals in it, and all that is great for gut health. Gut health is one of the things we think about a lot with our patients with Parkinson's disease, but everyone can benefit from healthy gut because a lot of chronic illnesses start in the gut. Okay, so we're gonna let this simmer a little bit and I'm gonna talk Sarah through this other recipe.
Okay, let's get started.
Okay, actually.
So should I just show everybody what I have here before we get started? You're gonna move it.
Whoa, that's hot. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, I got it. Yes, you can show everybody.
So we have some dried fruit here. Looks like dried apples, dried apricots.
And there might be some prunes there.
And some prunes, yeah.
Maybe. So what we're doing is we're making a sweet fruit compote. A lot of times our patients tell us they have issues. This is hot, so put the water in gently. A lot of times they tell us they have issues with constipation. So I like before you go to bed to have a little bit of stewed fruit. The greatest thing about it is it tastes great. It's very sweet. So this is a combination. You can use anything, any stewed fruit you want, dried fruit you want.
So I put in a cup of water, the dried fruit.
Okay.
All right. I am going to put in the zest of 1 orange. Gives it a really nice flavor.
Okay.
1 cinnamon stick. I suppose you could put in more if you want.
You can put in more if you want, yeah.
This has a tablespoon or 2 of honey. That's optional. You don't have to add the honey.
Or you can use maple syrup if you want.
Syrup.
Remember, when we look at patients with Parkinson's disease, I don't know about you, but at night sometimes you want something sweet. Does that happen?
All the time, yeah.
So when we look at patients with Parkinson's disease, sometimes they have sweet tooths or sweet cravings just because of it helps build up the dopamine a little bit. So we want to make sure they have something sweet that's healthy.
I'm going to add, this is the juice of 3 oranges. And lastly, a star anise, which looks like this. You don't see it often.
I'm looking up.
Sorry. But it adds a really nice, distinct flavor.
A little bit like a licorice type.
Anise, yeah.
Anise. Okay. So what we're gonna do is, Sarah's gonna do is we're gonna put that to simmer. And when that simmers, it's gonna get thick and caramelized and the fruits are gonna soften a little bit. Okay, so one of the things that we do with this soup is we puree it with either a hand blender or a regular blender. So you make sure it's a little bit warm, not too hot. You don't want to burn yourself. And then this is an immersion blender. I like to start out with this. And what you're doing is you're mixing up all the vegetables. You're trying to get everything smooth. One of the things that happens though, sometimes the immersion blender does not give you a desired consistency because it has a little bit more of the pieces left. So you can also, when it's cool, you can transfer it and pour it to your blender and just put it in your blender and then put it back in the pot. But I'm not going to use any more time for that because I want to talk a little bit more.
All right, so let's welcome our guest.
Oh wait, let me.
Oh no,
yeah,
you're
I have
not
one
done
more
yet?
thing.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, so usually one of the things we like to talk about and understand is what's going to happen when we're looking at a change in our diet. We have to still think of a few things that are critical and important. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to have you really evaluate what you're eating. We're going to have to make sure that you're trying to cook everything that's soft and easy to manage. Because if you're having problems chewing or swallowing and someone is avoiding eating, that's not really the answer. So cook your vegetables to a little softer, have sauces and gravies and soups with broth. Try and avoid any mixed consistency. So mixed consistency is like a chicken noodle soup. Because if you have trouble swallowing and liquids are going down quick and solids are still in your mouth, Marta's going to tell you you're going to have problems with what we call dysphagia. The other thing to think about is really because you might be eating less, try and have small, frequent meals. And the other thing we talked about is really looking at and evaluating having a small portion served. Sometimes our people have problems and they eat very, very slowly and then the food gets cold and then they're turned off. So serving a very small amount can really just help. The last thing is I wanted to ask you, do you ever have patients that complain that they feel great in the morning and it wanes in the afternoon?
Yeah, it's particularly we have with the medications, sort of the on periods and the off periods. There are moments of the day where they feel better and moments where they don't. That's true.
Okay, so then we want to make sure you're eating your best meal in the morning. And if breakfast is your thing, then load up on breakfast, but having something like the Greek yogurt or the fruits and stuff, just try and make sure when you have and you feel your best and you have your most energy, you're really focused on trying to get some good nutrition in. Okay. All right, so I think we can have our guests, because this is all heated up, and this is gonna be
It's just beginning to simmer. I
simmer.
can smell the orange. It smells delicious. And now I'd like to welcome Marta Kazandjian. Come on up. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you here. Marta is a medical speech pathologist who specializes in neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's. She's board certified in both swallowing and whole health and has been committed to caring for her patients with communication and swallowing challenges for over 30 years. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here. I am a real foodie, and so it smells amazing in this studio. I can't wait to taste the food.
Yeah, I think we're in for a treat. Before we do that, I do have a few questions for you.
Sure.
What are some of the challenges people with Parkinson's experience as it relates to either speaking or chewing and swallowing?
I know that you alluded to some of the classic symptoms, particularly with swallowing. I think what people might not know or understand is that we know that about between 40 and 80% of patients with Parkinson's actually present with impairment, both in communication and in swallowing. And what's sort of really interesting is that some of these symptoms that we see, for example, when people are speaking, often we can start to hear a lower volume of speech. So and again, it's sort of an interesting presentation of symptoms often because these are very subtle signs.
Yeah.
So a lower speaking volume, or it takes a little longer to get through a meal. So, a spouse often will say to me, yeah, my husband's now taking so much more time. He was the first one done, and now it takes him so much longer because chewing and the ability to actually, the strength and the ability to chew the food and manage it can take longer periods of time. So we start to see changes that are very subtle.
Yeah.
And it seems to be related, and so just understanding how Parkinson's manifests in terms of communication and swallowing, there's a depletion and a neurotransmitter called dopamine, and I'm sure you have spoken about this through all of these beautiful, wonderful shows. but it impacts directly not only in motor movements like walking and moving, but also in terms of both communication and swallowing. So the automaticity of the way we just sort of put food in our mouth and we eat it, or we just open our mouth and we start to talk.
We don't think about it,
But we don't
right?
think about
Yeah.
it. And so dopamine is responsible for sort of those automatic movements, the
Yeah.
automatic things that we do, including eating and swallowing.
Yeah, and I know many of my patients feel that changes in speech or chewing and swallowing only happen later in the disease. Is that true?
It's actually one of the hallmarks with Parkinson's is that people with Parkinson's have a reduced, we call it an impaired sensation. It's a proprioceptive impairment. So the impairment actually can occur oftentimes way before the diagnosis is even made.
So even before they have the walking and the balance and the movement problems.
Yeah, and so it's there, but it's subtle and a person may not notice it.
Yeah.
And what's characteristic very often for the patients that come to see me is that it's the spouse or the good friend or the daughter or the son that says, yeah, something's different.
Yeah.
So it can happen very, very early.
And that's when I start worrying about malnutrition too, or just changes in weight and changes in strength and changes of energy that comes from a lot of the food we eat too. So
Absolutely, absolutely. It all
And
goes hand in
related
hand.
to that, are there things people can do? Are there preventative measures that people living with Parkinson's disease can think about and make choices in their daily life to help them?
Very much so. I know that you mentioned when the show first started that, we know that if you exercise and you move and you eat well, those preventative practices have a marked improvement in a person's journey through Parkinson's and most of the neurodegenerative diseases.
Yeah.
But, we have to pay attention to our sleep. We have to pay attention to building strength because the stronger a person is, the stronger and the longer that person will be able to maintain sort of what we call a functional reserve.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things that we do, particularly the medical speech pathologist when I meet someone for the first time and I talk about all of these preventative practices. I like to talk also about building pulmonary and respiratory strength. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
When we're eating and something goes down the wrong way, what happens?
You cough.
You cough.
Right.
You just have to get it out. It goes down the wrong way and you but unfortunately, as we lose strength, we can also lose our ability to cough effectively. So I do lots of preventative work to gain strength, to be able to gain that stamina so that you maintain cough, so that you can protect your airway and protect yourself from a consequence that is potentially could potentially occur, which is developing pneumonia as a consequence of swallowing impairment as the disease progresses.
So we have time for one more question.
Sure.
And that is, what do you recommend people do if they notice changes or difficulties with chewing and swallowing?
Please come and see a medical speech pathologist. It's so important to get to know you early so that you have someone in your corner very early in the course of this journey that we call Parkinson's. Being able to have a baseline, see where you start from, seeing some of the difficulties you have, and then we can prescribe and work with you, do assessments that are very objective. Some may be radiologically based, some may just be clinically, watching somebody eat and swallow, measuring the sound and the volume of your voice. So seeing a medical speech pathologist early, even if you don't think that you're having any difficulty, we'd love to see you and partner with you on this course.
So let me comment on that too, because I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I get information from Marta is just what's the consistency of the food? What is the best for the patient? We talked about the mixed consistencies. We can talk about a minced moist diet or things cut up very fine and having your fork handy so you can test, is the food soft enough? Is it tiny enough pieces? And that's what Marta might do. Marta might say, I need this person on a minced moist diet. I need the person on a soft bite diet or a puree diet. So this would be a nice pureed consistency This could be minced moist if we cut it up a little bit smaller. And one of the things I like people to understand too is that whole idea of that mixed consistencies, can you just go over that again? So we can make sure people know that it's not just the food they're eating, but the liquids they're eating that's so critical.
Yeah, I mean, I use very objective measures with my patient, with the patient in front of me, because not everybody is the same. Everyone is very different. We're individual, and we have to really treat somebody as an individual. So mixed consistency is, I mean, I'm glad you used the chicken soup example. It's a perfect example because people say, well, it's soft and there's liquid there. But those pieces of noodle and those pieces of carrot that you're chewing at the same time can be difficult for some patients because you're trying to hold on and manage a liquid consistency at the same time as chew and manipulate that food, and so that you can then protect your airway. So again, meeting with a medical speech pathologist to talk about what the best consistency is. We work interprofessionally very closely with our physical therapy and our nutrition colleagues, and together we really figure out the best treatment plan for the individual.
I love that you said that. That was a perfect ending to this discussion, which is you really do need a healthcare team.
You do.
Right? It needs to include the family, the patient, medical speech pathology, nutrition, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and we're so lucky to have you here with us.
Oh, it's
Thank
such
you.
an honor, and this is beautiful, and this is a perfect example. This is a perfect example of what we would call a single consistency.
Yes.
So this is a pureed consistency, it's a single consistency, as opposed
Yeah,
to
exactly.
something like this, if we can show our
If we
viewers.
pass it to Paula and she'll put it on the stove so we can get
Okay.
an overhead view
Yeah.
of the parfait.
So this is basically, this can be adapted to your needs. Like I said, a lot of patients have difficulty with going to the bathroom, so we like to have some good sources of fiber. So this is a plain Greek yogurt. That's for increasing our protein, and it's also the puree, the soft fruit. You can puree this whole batch of the fruit as well. And if you are chewing, you can use some seeds and nuts or granola, but if you're not, you can leave those out. It's perfectly up to you.
And what I want to mention is that because people sometimes will have trouble even moving the food, because constipation is a definite issue for some of our patients, also moving it through from the pharynx to the esophagus into the stomach, taking sips of liquid and alternating liquids and solids can also help you manage your diet.
So,
do you want to sample our soup?
I would love
it's
to.
very, very hot. I would let's
I-
put a little bit of yogurt in it as a dollop, but we are running low on time.
It's flavorful.
Mm.
I taste the turmeric. It is incredible. I highly recommend making this for Thanksgiving. In fact, I'm going to have a big meal to cook. So this is amazing.
Okay. I don't know if we're out of time, but
We're out of time, but remember,
eating well tastes great.
Thanks
Thank
for joining
you.
us. Bye.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this
Oh,
really is
and you're
good.
natural.